Good evening and welcome to The Nation Speaks. I'm your host, Cindy Drucker. Tonight we have another special edition for you coming from the Turning Point USA Student Action Summit 2020 in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Oh, there's so much frustration, and we've been focusing on that a little bit. I think that's healthy to do, a diagnostic of how this thing was stolen from us. I think that a lot of people are wondering what else they can do. And if Biden becomes president, things are going to get worse. People don't like it when things get worse, but they don't have to stay that way. And human action can change that. Now, I'm not giving up on the president. I haven't given up. I believe that there are still measures that can be taken where the president can serve another term. It is not a strong possibility at the moment, just based on the lack of a Republican Party that exists in the country right now. But I will say that I'm optimistic outside of politics. I'm optimistic about what we're doing here at Turning Point. You see these young, energetic, faces and voices. This is a very special thing. And I'm also excited about the type of movement that we're creating that's focusing on freedom of speech, that's focusing on workers, that's focusing on restoring the American way of life. And no matter what happens, I'm going to keep fighting. And for that, I'm going to remain positive.
And how do you see the Republican Party right now? It feels like there too, there's a bit of a divide. There's a lot of the freshman classes come in with a lot of, from the non-political class as well. So what do you see the dynamics?
Oh, yeah, the party's changing for the better. The question is, will the Republican Party remain to be the party of the Chamber of Commerce, the open borders, the pro-China, the pandering to corporate interest party? Or will the Republican Party decide to be a party that continues the book that I wrote, but it wasn't my idea, is the MAGA doctrine, which is a doctrine of America first, which is a doctrine that puts our citizens ahead of people halfway across the world. And I think that that's a very popular political agenda. And no matter how many Republican senators think they're in control, they're not. They answer to us. And that's why they are begging grassroots conservatives to show up in Georgia, and they should be. And that's why if we win in Georgia, the number one thing we must say is no amnesty under any circumstances whatsoever in the United States Senate we're going to allow in any way, shape, or form. So look, the battle for the Republican Party is on. There's a lot of people that are going to want to erase all memory of Donald Trump. That's never going to happen. In fact, I think we should do the opposite. We should say, how is it that a guy with no political experience got 74 million votes, and all of you losers have never been able to build coalitions like this? Why did he do so well with Hispanics in the Rio Grande Valley? Why is it that people would wait hours and hours to go into a rally for him? Well, maybe because he actually did something in his life and delivered and said he did what he said he was going to do.
All right, let me ask you one last question before you go. A lot has come out recently about China's CCP specifically, infiltrating, having influence in the government, academia, corporations. Do you see that house getting cleaned out by the current politicians? What do you think is going to happen there?
That's unlikely. The Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated every single sector of our society. And we did it because we had a for sale sign outside of every single sector of our society. It's going to happen, hopefully, in a variety of different ways. I hope our Department of Justice gets serious about this. If they started all of a sudden throwing indictments and showing how serious we are about foreign infiltration, a lot of it would stop because the Chinese Communist Party, they're a bunch of cowards, and they're also evil, and we should be unafraid to call them that. I don't plan to visit to China anytime soon. I'm sure I'm on a do not enter list, and the feeling is completely mutual. I've called for a complete and total suspension of trade with China. Every Republican should be unafraid to do the same. They launched an epidemiological Pearl Harbor against us. They send spies to sleep with our Congress people, allegedly. We've heard no different, so I'm going to say that probably happened. What they've done in the South China Sea, Belt and Road Initiative, Silk Road, cyber hacking, 1 million Muslims in concentration camps, the deindustrialization of our country, the intentional targeting of our industry. I could do a whole hour on this, but I won't. Instead, I'll say that they are our enemy. They're not an adversary. They're not like this nicely. They're an enemy, and they're more powerful than the Soviet Union ever was. It's about time we start taking them seriously.
All right, Charlie, thank you so
Thanks.
much for joining us. So we were just chatting a little bit before about the Republican Party and where things are at with Republicans and conservatives. Right now, there's a bit of a division going on. It looks like those that are going to fight hard to the end in terms of fighting prospective election fraud and that, and then others who just want to, go ahead with politics as usual. What do you see going on?
Yeah, well, boy, it's more than that, right? That's a proxy for a big battle that's going on inside the Republican Party. It's been sort of been percolating for a long time, even before Trump. He's sort of the Schelling point for that. He's the focus of all of those energies. But you kind of have this division. It's like the division you see in American culture across the board, which is you have like the ruling class group in the Republican Party, basically at war with the base. There's some notable exceptions and credit to them, but this is as we kind of get further and further from the election, this is something that's going to breaking out into the open more and more. So I'll give you an example we were chatting about before. So I live in Arizona, and I think people know that there's this war going on for what is the Republican Party, what's it going to do going forward, what does it stand for, like what are we actually trying to achieve? Like, the fight has been for the past year or so, like get Trump reelected because he's going to do X, Y, and Z. But what's X, Y, and Z in 2021 and 2022? And so you have kind of a proxy battle being fought right now. So in Arizona, we have the governor of Arizona, who is a Republican, but very much in that sort of anodyne, very gray, kind of rhino-y Republican, so very soft on most issues. And he and his staff are at war with the state party. So the state party chairwoman, Kelly Ward, she's been working hard on like election-related stuff. So Andy Biggs is congressman from suburban Phoenix. He's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. We've got Paul Gosar, who represents sort of northwestern Arizona. They've been very, very pro-Trump and very, very much out in front on the election integrity stuff. But they are getting publicly criticized by the governor and by the governor's staff for doing those things. They've been called crazy, like you're a permanent member of Crazy Town. Like this has been spilled out into the open. And so we've got this clash that's going on. And some of the election-related stuff is going to recede as time goes by, but you still have those big issues, which is as Republicans, like, what are we? Like, what are we trying to do? What's the Republican Party trying to do? And there's a tendency, I think, there's twofold. Like, there's the hard policy stuff, like how do we get the middle class to be bigger? How do we get wages to rise? What do we do about China? All of those sorts of questions. But there's like an aesthetic, practical question too, which is, are we going to be a party that fights, or are we going to be a party that rolls over unless the Democrats do whatever they want? And so you have both of those things playing out, and it's one of these things where it's like a war for the soul of the American right, and with the Republican Party being the best vessel at this point for all of those hopes and aspirations.
How much do you think Trump changed the Republican Party?
That's a good question. Like, I'll answer it two ways. Like, in one sense, he changed it really fundamentally on some issues. Like, he is like one of the biggest single things that Trump did is he changed the entire debate around China in this country. He did it in the Democratic Party, he did it in the Republican Party, and that's a sea change. Like, it went from the way, oh great, China's joining the WTO 20 years ago to hold on a second. Maybe we made a big mistake. Maybe China's actually our biggest, geopolitical adversary. So there was those type of things. But for Trump, that was also in the context of, hey, where'd all the jobs go? Hey, why are wages declining? Hey, why is Youngstown, Ohio in such trouble? And, I love, Trump being Trump, of course, he says the things that nobody else would say, which sometimes are, like his tweets, but sometimes he says things like, we love our coal miners. Like, we have the most beautiful coal miners in the world. It's very Trumpy, but it gets to like a fundamental point, which is that the Republican Party is coming to terms with the fact that it's the party of the middle, right? Basically, the Democratic Party is the party of elites plus the broad sort of underclass that's dependent upon government. And the Republican Party, I think, has always had this, misunderstanding of itself as the party of like big corporations and the rich. That's just not true. Like, look at where the rich give their donations, And so Trump really changed it in a fundamental way because he brought it to reality. Like those things blossomed under him. I guess the way that, in a way, it wasn't a big change is that stuff, I think, was always kind of there. And the Republican Party was just waiting. Meaning, when I say that, I mean the people, like the people who vote for Republicans. I feel like that was there for 20 years, 30 years, like going back to like the Perot and the Buchanan era in the 90s. and they were just waiting for a champion, somebody to actually say a lot of these things out loud, like, hold on a second, maybe it's not a good idea that we just exported the middle class to China, that type of stuff.
So given that, do you think any changes or what we're seeing now in the Republican Party would outlast President Trump?
Yeah, they will. I mean, we're the people who think that, like the America First agenda that Trump described, the people who think that those things are important, like that's the majority of the party. That's where the base is. But the fight now is to make sure that those people who believe those things actually take control of the apparatus of the party. So, and that means everything from making sure we get the right people elected, to office, but also like who are the precinct committee captains, who are the people who run the state parties, who are the people who run the national party, because controlling the apparatus matters. It's also a huge job because you got 50 different state parties, and those things feed into the national party, and people are getting their minds around that. Like, okay, like we have to actually have to recapture the party from people who are opposed to the things that Trump was describing. But I think those things are well underway.
How big of a role do the sort of political class actors play in the Republican Party? I mean, Trump was certainly one of them. It seems like a lot of the freshman Congress members are also of that. I was talking to Mary Miller yesterday. How much of a role will they play, or are they playing, do you think?
Well, the way it looks right now, I mean, it's hard to see the future, right? But the way it looks right now is it's going to be a bigger role. You talk about Mary Miller. There's some other newly elected, like freshmen congressmen and women. I think they're going to play a bigger role. I think, just from, this is very anecdotal, but when I talk to people around the country, there's a lot of people who've been very motivated to they're not political, they just have a job, or they, own a small business or whatever. They want to actually go do something, because they say this isn't working, and without Trump in office, we need to do something, because we need to make sure that we build on what he was able to accomplish so that we can, achieve more over the next 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years.
So you're a freshman or freshwoman, I guess. You started out in politics, I guess, a bit late in life. What prompted you?
Well, I'm a farmer. I reside in the Illinois 15, which is the largest congressional district in Illinois. And I've been involved in education, 7 children, 17 grandchildren. And yes, so this is a pivotal point in our country, and I am concerned that our children will be able to recognize the country that I grew up in. And I want our children and grandchildren to be able to have access to all the wonderful opportunities that we've had to pursue the American dream. And so a man named Bill Montgomery, he's the one that discovered Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA's hero, and got him started. And also a lot of other people he inspired, but he encouraged me to run. And when he did, I said to him, Bill, I'm not a lawyer or a politician. And he said, Mary, you represent the family, which is foundational to the well-being of our culture, and you represent agriculture and small business, which is foundational to the well-being of our economy. So anyway, he inspired me to run. The thing I'm proud of is that my whole campaign was positive. I focused on solutions. I believe the American people are shutting down by the name calling, and it just wears them out. So I decided if I couldn't run a positive campaign, I didn't want to go.
So what are the key solutions that you've been putting forward?
Well, for our district, it's the economy. I mean, we have all the ingredients for success. We have the best farmland in the world. We have a big ag economy. We have coal. We have more BTUs of coal than there's oil in Saudi Arabia. We produce $1 billion worth of oil every year. We have manufacturing, great educational facilities. We have the University of Illinois is doing all this great research. But we need a new recipe. And Illinois is destroying its economy. So for me, I want to go and bring back economic opportunities. I want to expand the ag economy, and I want to provide great constituent services.
So is the destruction of the economy just related to COVID, or there were trends before that we're having?
Definite trends before that. So we're overpowered by Chicago Democrat policies, and you've probably heard of Mike Madigan. He's been in since Richard Nixon. I'm actually a term limits person, and he could be a poster child for that. We've talked to some of the key people in the Democrat Party that come from Chicago, And we've appealed to them, if you want that, could you please have regional laws? For example, their gun laws. They have the strictest gun laws in United States, and they have one of the highest murder rates. For us downstate, we don't have a high murder rate. And for us, if we want to call the police, it could take an hour for the county police to get to our place, and we want the ability to defend ourselves. And the Second Amendment is foundational to protect all the rest of our freedoms.
And so what are your thoughts on the current political situation, particularly the aftermath of the 2020 election?
Well, I think the American people deserve deep investigation into election fraud. And hopefully it's not too late, but if it is too late for President Trump, we still need to have justice. People need to be brought to justice that were involved in committing election fraud. And I think that needs to be investigated. It's interesting that it's the swing states that passed unconstitutional rules to regulate the election, and it's disheartening, and we're going to be a banana republic if we don't deal with it. It needs to be dealt with immediately. I do think we're going to take the House back in 2 years. I think the Democrat Party is in disarray. The liberals and the leftists are fighting with each other, and I hope we use it to our advantage.
Have you met your other freshmen yet?
I have. It's a great group full of what I would call patriots that want to serve. They're from diverse backgrounds. I think President Trump inspired this group of ordinary people to get off the sidelines and go fight for our freedoms and for future generations. So they're doctors, farmers, small businessmen, restaurant owners, pharmacists, and I think we're going to do great things.
And now here's America Q&A.
Right now, I think that the other side is way more vocal when it comes to liberals versus conservatives. I feel like, especially on college campuses, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, and it's easy to feel like you're the only one who thinks it the way that you do. So I think that being brave and stepping out is super important, because it's so easy to be the silent majority and not even know about it, because the silent minority is so loud and so overpowering.
It depends on the person, I think. Some people it might not be bravery, but then others, I think it really is bravery, and it shows that they care and whatnot.
I feel like you just have to have courage and just stand out in the crowd and be bold and stand up for what you believe in.
I don't think it's something that's a matter of bravery. I think it's a matter of someone who's passionate about what they believe in, and really, because for me, I do that all the time at Turning Point. I table for my college campus, and what I do is I engage with students all the time, and I stand up for what I believe in, and it's really a lot of conservative beliefs that I think need to be addressed on college campuses, and so I do that all the time.
So you recently left a very successful company that you built over a number of years, multi-million-dollar company. Why?
It's a great question. Well, I built Varsity with my team for nearly 40 years from the ground up. Started it in my apartment when I was 24 years old, and just kind of got to that point where it's got great leadership there now, and I got to that kind of proverbial fork in the road where you say, now what? What's most important? I was fortunate enough in that business we train hundreds of thousands of young athletes every year. Fortunate enough to be involved in something that I felt really made a difference for the athletes themselves, for what they do at their schools and communities. So I've had that advantage, really, that benefit, and so I wanted to do something that could still make a difference, and maybe even on a broader scale. And I've always been very interested in politics, but not involved because I was too busy building that business. And so I had a chance to step back and look at what I was interested in. My background being from the middle class, how do I make the kind of opportunity I had available to young people for the next generations, and how can we affect what's going on out there in this country economically and politically, where we can take the country forward and really avoid the kind of pitfalls that seem to be developing in the future.
So we've seen a few high-profile businessmen business leaders coming into politics because they see there's a lot wrong and they want to help right the ship.
Beginning with President Trump.
Donald J. Trump, exactly, being one of them. Mike Lindell has put himself forward. Yourself now. Why? What is it that motivated you to get involved? And then I want to talk about why others aren't doing something similar.
Well, again, for me, I've been fortunate enough to, as people say, live the American dream. But I've been fortunate enough to really be able to build something special because of the personal freedoms that we have, and because of the type of economy that was open and growing, and those things are under attack right now. And so, we can either sit there and watch the news and go, yeah, that's happening, or you can decide, I want to do something about it. And it just gotten to a point where I felt compelled to get involved. Now, having said that, I don't think it's a good idea for companies themselves to take a stand politically, right? If the company's CEO or chairman or some of their managers or the employees want to be involved politically, they should do it. They're always going to be in the position they're in with that title, whatever, but they should do it for themselves, individually. I think it's a big mistake for companies to start taking a position. And you see this with some of these bigger companies, and they're canceling out people and canceling employees, losing their job because perhaps they're conservative. Huge mistake. I mean, the country is pretty evenly divided, and when it comes to people being involved in a company and what it's trying to do for the public, you need to have a big tent, you need to have everybody. So the kind of canceling that takes place is wrong, it's frightening, it's exclusionary, and it's not the right thing to do. Now, I do think it's important right now for more business people to get involved. You can't, individually, you cannot just sit on the sidelines. If you do, don't complain about what happens and what kind of policies come your way and how it affects your company and your community. It's time to get involved. I mean, unfortunately, that's where we are right now.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight at The Nation Speaks. We'll be here again tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And from all of us here, good night.